When Maya and Mia Turner decided to sign up at Warriors Path Karate Dojo, the sisters knew that being among the very few black students in a mostly white class wouldn't be easy, but they couldn't have imagined what lay ahead. From the very first day, Jake Harrison and Connor Mills, two arrogant black belt students notorious for bullying, were determined to make the 14-year-old twins their newest pastime. The taunts escalated quickly, and when Jake sneered, "Even monkeys can mimic people," they'd crossed every line. What Jake and Connor didn't know was that, after each humiliating, painful session, the sisters quietly trained in their dad's garage. The bullies thought they were slowly crushing two fragile yellow belt girls. But in reality, they were dead wrong. Before we go on, drop a comment telling us where you're watching this video from, and don't forget to subscribe, because you definitely won't want to miss tomorrow's story. That afternoon, a warm sunlight spilled across the pavement in front of Warriors Path Karate, the most prestigious dojo in the Millbrook area. Maya and Mia Turner stepped down from their father David Turner's dark green pickup, hearts pounding with excitement and nerves. Both had just turned 14 and, for the first time, were allowed by Dad to pursue the karate they'd always dreamed about. Maya smoothed out her crisp, new white gi, her eyes sparkling as she looked up at the proud sign that read, Warriors Path Karate Dojo. Beside her, Mia, the quieter twin, rested a steadying hand on Maya's shoulder, offering the familiar reassurance they always shared when embarking on something new. "Do your best," their father said in a warm but firm tone. David Turner, a strong man who'd served years in the military, had always taught his daughters that courage and determination were the most important things in life. "I'll pick you up in 2 hours. Remember everything I've taught you." "Yes, Dad," Maya replied confidently, squeezing her sister's hand before hurrying inside. As soon as they walked through the doors, Maya and Mia sensed the difference. The spacious training hall, hung with trophies, gold medals, and portraits of famed masters, was almost entirely full of white students, making the two sisters feel strangely alone. Curious, and sometimes scrutinizing, looks turned toward them almost instantly. "Welcome to Warriors Path," said a voice behind them. They turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 50s wearing a black GI. This was Sensei Robert Mitchell, the dojo's renowned instructor. Though he gave a polite smile, his eyes were sharp and serious enough to make Maya shiver. "We're Maya and Mia Turner," Mia said respectfully, trying to hide her nerves. Sensei Mitchell nodded once, then looked toward the main class in session. "Join the new students over there and begin with the basic stances," he said flatly, emotionless. The twins hurried over. Only a few steps in, they realized how closely they were being watched. Ahead of them stood two taller boys, a few years older, each with a confident black belt tied around his waist. Jake Harrison and Connor Mills, the dojo's standout upper-rank students. Jake leaned toward Connor, speaking loud enough for the sisters to hear. "Look who we have today. 2 special guests." Connor laughed mockingly, eyeing Maya and Mia up and down. "I wonder if they're here to train, or if we're hosting a zoo." A ripple of giggles spread through the class. Mia's cheeks burned as she gripped the edge of her gi. Maya, braver of the two, gave her sister's hand a reassuring tug and whispered firmly, "Don't mind them, Mia. We're here to learn, not to listen to nonsense." But deep down, they both knew this was only the beginning of a much bigger challenge. Jake and Connor's sneers weren't just passing jabs. They'd marked Maya and Mia as their next targets. Their first training session at Warriors Path felt heavier than they'd anticipated. Every basic move they made drew Jake and Connor's mocking attention, punctuated by derisive laughs from across the hall. Though they tried to stay calm, each glance, each whisper felt like a punch to the spirit, making it hard to breathe. When class finally ended, the sisters left the dojo without the eager smiles they'd worn that morning. Their dad's pickup was parked out front, and David Turner immediately noticed the sadness and fatigue in their eyes. "What happened, girls?" he asked, concern in his voice. Maya and Mia exchanged glances. Then Maya forced a small smile. "Nothing, Dad. It was just a bit tougher than we expected." David nodded silently, but the seasoned veteran, battle-tested and perceptive, knew something was wrong. He chose to say nothing more for now, waiting until he could learn exactly what had gone on. As the truck pulled away, Maya and Mia glanced back at the dojo, its lights still shining and laughter still echoing inside. They understood clearly that their journey here wouldn't be easy, but armed with the determination their father had instilled in them, the Turner twins resolved not to back down. No matter how rocky the road ahead, Maya and Mia Turner would keep pushing forward. What they didn't know was that today's trials were merely the opening act in a series of grueling tests, both on the mats and within their own hearts, to fight injustice and prejudice with courage and unbreakable spirit. From their very second practice, Maya and Mia sensed the dojo felt even colder than the early spring chill outside. The excitement of day one gave way to a wary vigilance each time they stepped through the doors of Warrior's Path. Every eye seemed fixed on the sisters, part curiosity, part caution, and many of those looks carried equal measures of distance and disdain. On the training floor, when Sensei Mitchell grouped students by belt rank, Maya and Mia found themselves at the very end of the line with the other beginners, even though they'd shown solid grasp of the basic techniques. Whispers arose again from the nearby black belt circle, led by the towering Jake Harrison with his blonde hair and smirk, and his sidekick, the cold-eyed Connor Mills, who never left Jake's shoulder. "What a joke," Jake sneered toward Maya and Mia, his voice low enough to evade Sensei Mitchell's ears, but loud enough for nearby students to catch. "I wonder what they'll do today, huh, Connor?" Connor shrugged with a mocking grin. "Just watch how they move, like two baby monkeys trying to mimic humans." A few older students snickered, eyes downcast or busily retying their belts. No one dared speak up, even though Jake's insult struck at the little newcomer's dignity. Jake pressed on, this time deliberately louder once Sensei's back was turned. "Hey, Maya, Mia, feel like eating bananas instead of practicing today? Maybe you two should try the zoo's workout first." He taunted, chest puffed out like a victor in a cruel contest. The rest of the class fell silent, heads bowed to the mats, some pretending to adjust their belts, others staring off as if they hadn't heard a thing. The tension was electric. Every minute dragged on endlessly for Maya and Mia. Maya clenched her hands so tightly that her knuckles went white. She glanced at Mia and saw her twin fighting back tears of humiliation and anger. They'd faced prejudice before at school, but the suffocating atmosphere in the dojo and the silent complicity of this small community amplified their pain tenfold. Sensei Mitchell, who ought to have been their ally, seemed utterly oblivious. He focused solely on technical form, occasionally walking past Maya and Mia without once pausing to offer guidance or encouragement. More than once, he stood just a few steps from Jake and Connor, plainly within earshot of their nasty jibes, yet only called out generally, "Focus on your technique. No private chatter." His indifference, and, effectively, his tacit approval, only emboldened Jake and Connor. They believed their black belts granted them absolute immunity, as if the dojo's rules applied only to outsiders while they stood above them all. The low point of that day came when Sensei Mitchell paired everyone up for reflex drills. Jake positioned himself facing Maya, eyes full of challenge. As they practiced, he subtly twisted her wrist, sending a sharp pain through her arm. "Keep going. Don't tell me you can't handle this already," he whispered just loud enough for her to hear, but too quietly for Sensei to intervene. Connor, meanwhile, shoved Mia's shoulder harder than necessary, nearly sending her crashing to the mat. The days that followed were no better. Each karate class became a veritable battlefield of isolation and intimidation. Bruises multiplied on Maya's arms and legs, and though both twins masked their hurt with stoic faces, their spirits were fracturing, and they never complained to their parents. Yet the cruelest wound wasn't the physical pain, but the helplessness of watching everyone around them, from fellow students to the head instructor, choose silence over standing up for what was right. In a space plastered with banners proclaiming respect, honor, discipline, only Maya and Mia understood that sometimes silence is the keenest weapon of all. That night, their footsteps heavy, Maya and Mia slipped into bed side by side, moonlight slicing through the window. In the quiet, they both realized they would have to learn not only to defend themselves physically, but also to protect their own hearts from prejudice, apathy, and the cold indifference of those around them. And this was only the beginning of a pain that would change their lives forever. The quiet nights at the Turner house hadn't been peaceful for Maya and Mia since they started training at Warrior's Path. Their shared bedroom grew thick with heavy sighs and dark bruises, purple, blue, and red, streaking their small arms, shoulders, and legs. Each morning, Maya tried to hide her marks under long sleeves, while Mia silently covered her scrapes with bandages, always smiling and saying, "It's nothing. I just tripped." To their parents, the girls remained strong, independent, proud to train at the region's top dojo. Whenever David Turner asked, "How was practice today, my two girls?" "It was great, Dad. Sensei said we've improved so much." Maya and Mia always answered with the brightest smiles they could muster, hiding the dull ache in their bodies and hearts. But behind those words lay unending mental torture. On the dojo floor, Maya and Mia existed like ghosts in a cold world, both hunted prey and isolated outcasts. Jake and Connor, with their cold stares and arrogant smirks, seized every opportunity to turn practice into public torment. Jake's glances at Maya during a kick, or Connor's deliberate leg sweep in a drill, were obvious intimidation tactics. One late afternoon session, Sensei Mitchell organized sparring matches among the new yellow belts. Jake, coincidentally, paired with Maya. When the whistle blew, instead of light exchanges, Jake delivered an overpowered kick to Maya's hip, sending her crashing to the mat. The other students stirred, but Sensei only glanced over and snapped, "Maya, focus. Get up and continue." Maya winced as she rose, salty sweat mixing with tears she swallowed back. Jake leaned in and hissed, half mocking, half threatening, "Want to be a fighter? You're nowhere near ready." Those words echoed endlessly. Even in the locker room after class, Maya and Mia heard Connor shout to his friends, "Watch out. If these two monkeys stand together, this place is going to smell like a banana patch." Fear and humiliation built day by day, yet Maya and Mia never dared tell their parents, partly to spare Dad worry, partly because they clung to hope. If we endure long enough, maybe things will change or Jake and Connor will tire. But while bruises healed, the wounds in their hearts only deepened. Maya and Mia's confidence and joy faded, replaced by dread at the thought of the dojo. Late at night, under the dim bedside lamp, Maya whispered, "Mia, would it be shameful if we quit?" "I don't know. I'm just afraid of making Mom and Dad sad. Dad's so proud of us." So the twins grit their teeth and endured in silence, each day a trial of body and spirit. David Turner, A man who'd faced bombs and the pains of war was not so easily deceived. One weekend evening, while cleaning his garage, he saw Mia pull off her sweater, revealing a cluster of bruises on her shoulders. His expression darkened. Memories of wartime horrors flooded back. He'd seen young comrades suffer in silence, and now he saw it in his daughters. He called them into the living room, voice low and serious. "Mia, is there something you need to tell me? I don't want the usual answer. I've seen too many hide their pain, but I never want my daughters to suffer alone." Maya glanced at Mia. Mia stared at the floor, clutching her shirt. Neither dared speak. In the heavy silence, David sighed and sat down between them, his steady hand on their shoulders, protective and firm. "I'm here whenever you need to talk. You are never alone." That night, for the first time in weeks, Maya and Mia slept deeply, not because their pain had ended, but because a spark of hope had been lit. Maybe, if they found the courage, the twins would no longer have to live in two worlds at once, a brave front for their family, and hidden wounds bleeding in their hearts. That night, as Maya and Mia walked in after practice, David Turner immediately sensed something was off. The warm glow of the kitchen light spread across the floor as he leaned against the doorway, quietly watching his daughter's every move. Mia tried to walk normally, but each step seemed tentative, like she was hiding pain in every joint. Her left sleeve had ridden up, exposing fresh bruises on her dusky skin, impossible to conceal even when she hurriedly tugged her sleeve back down. David's brow furrowed. He said nothing, just kept watching until the girls started to head upstairs, then called firmly, Maya, come sit with me for a moment." The living room felt smaller in the heavy silence. Maya sank into a chair, avoiding her father's gaze, while Mia shivered and clasped her own wrist as if to comfort herself. David pulled another chair closer, his eyes serious but full of concern and love. "I told you before, if anything happens, you tell me first. No hiding, no fear. Tonight I want the truth." Pressure filled the room. Maya glanced at Mia. They both searched each other's eyes, seeking courage as they always did together. Mia's voice was barely more than a whisper. "Dad, things at the dojo, they're not what we've been telling you these past weeks." Maya bit her lip. It was time to stop pretending. She straightened her back as if bracing for a storm. "Dad, at the dojo, we're being bullied. It's not just hard practice, it's really bad treatment." Each word cracked the strong facade Maya had fought so hard to wear. Mia continued, tears welling in her voice. "Jake and Connor, two black belts there, constantly taunt us, call us monkeys and street kids, and go out of their way to hit harder during sparring. Sometimes they shove me down on purpose, twist my arm until it hurts. Once Jake whispered awful things into my ear. Dad, we're scared." David's knuckles whitened as he gripped the armrests, fighting to keep his composure. Old memories of the battlefield surged back, where the weak learned to hide their fear to survive. But now his own little girls were enduring that in a place meant to teach respect and protection. He lowered his voice, controlled but edged. "What about Sensei Mitchell? The other students? Didn't anyone help you?" Maya shook her head, tears shining in her eyes. "Sensei Mitchell knows what's happening. He stood right there and pretended not to hear. He only cares about Jake and Connor because they're wealthy, top students. The others, no one wants to get targeted like us." The air in the room grew heavier. David leaned back, rubbing his temples, voice thick with emotion. "Why did you hide this from me so long?" Mia wiped her eyes, hesitating. "We knew you were proud of how strong we are. We were afraid you'd be disappointed, and we thought if we just endured, things might get better." Those words hit David harder than any shell or bullet he'd faced. He held no anger toward his daughters, only at himself for not seeing the truth sooner. Gently, he pulled them both into his arms. "No one has the right to make you feel small or afraid, especially in a place that should be like a second home. From now on, things will be different." In that moment, a cold resolve settled in David Turner's heart. Justice and dignity could wait no longer. Maya and Mia would no longer suffer in the shadows. Their painful secret was laid bare, and it was time for a father to stand up and protect what mattered most. Wrapped in their father's warm embrace, Maya and Mia felt the shift. They knew that from this night on, the Turner family would no longer be silent. Storms still lay ahead, but this time they would face them together, never alone again. The pain of that night's confession still lingered in Maya and Mia's eyes, but in their father's arms they felt the darkness crack open to reveal a new hope. David Turner, who had endured the fiercest battles and watched comrades fall because they failed to protect one another, would not allow his daughters to remain victims another moment. The very next morning, he set his plan into motion. In the chilly garage behind their house, David cleared everything out, rolled the pickup truck outside, and laid down an old mat. He unpacked a heavy bag, gloves, and wrist wraps, transforming that humble space into a makeshift training room, a safe trench where Maya and Mia would learn to meet their fears head-on with real skills. "Starting today, I'm your coach," he announced, voice firm and eyes burning with uncompromising resolve. "I'm not teaching you how to win a karate tournament. I'm teaching you how to survive, like soldiers, like true fighters." At first, the girls were surprised, even a little terrified. They had thought dojo training was tough enough, and now here was their father, all military precision and strict discipline. But in his gaze they also saw limitless love and an unspoken promise: "I will never let anyone hurt you again." Night after night, as darkness fell over the neighborhood, Maya and Mia would slip out of the house under the guise of doing homework, then sneak down to the garage to begin their secret training. David started them on basic conditioning: push-ups, jump squats, rope climbs, endurance runs around the yard, building not just muscle, but the grit to push through any limit. Once their bodies adapted, he introduced them to the combat tactics he'd used in Afghanistan: low defensive stances, leveraging an opponent's force against them, and delivering quick, powerful strikes to vulnerable targets: the chin, throat, solar plexus, and knees. There were no ceremonial bows or graceful forms, only raw survival instincts and total focus. He taught Maya how to use her speed and reach against stronger adversaries, and showed Mia how to spring back up whenever she hit the ground. Some evenings, David played the bully himself, reenacting the very maneuvers Jake and Connor had used: throws, wrist locks, chokeholds, so his daughters could practice countering each one. The garage rang with their labored breaths, the slap of gloves, the occasional grunt or tearful gasp. Every time they stumbled, David would kneel, soothe their bruises, and remind them, "A warrior never gives up. When you fall, you get up faster and stronger. That's how you make fear afraid of you." Gradually, Maya's eyes sharpened with determination. Once guarded and reserved, she learned to channel her anger into every punch and kick, each blow fueled by her wounded pride. Mia shed her timidity, discovering how to move with grace, strike with speed, and outthink any opponent. But it wasn't just their bodies that grew stronger. The bond between father and daughters deepened too. Between sets, David shared stories from his service, tales of courage, of fighting not just with fists, but with the heart. He reminded them, "Your greatest strength isn't in your muscles or your moves, it's in your spirit, the unbreakable will to stand tall no matter what." Night after night, when training ended, the three of them would sit together on the garage step beneath a sky full of stars, breathing hard but smiling. The bruises faded, replaced by a confident energy that shone in their eyes and in every step they took. No longer did the thought of Jake and Connor, or the echo of their mocking laughter, make the twins flinch. Their transformation was so subtle that most people didn't notice. At school, Maya and Mia still seemed to be the quiet girls next door. At the dojo, Jake and Connor still assumed their prey were as weak as ever. They had no idea that in the silent refuge of the Turner garage, two little warriors were rising, preparing for the real fight. Not just to defend themselves, but to reclaim the respect they were owed. From that moment on, Maya and Mia were no longer victims. In their hearts burned a new fire, one of unwavering determination, and a will that refused to bow to any darkness. Since those secret garage workouts with their dad, the change in Maya and Mia has been gradual but unmistakable. Outwardly, they still wore their usual shy demeanors, but inside, they'd forged a layer of mental armor with every drop of sweat and every ache they endured. They no longer trembled stepping into Warrior's path, nor did they bow their heads to avoid Jake and Connor's stares. In the crowded class, Maya and Mia calmly observed everything. Jake's hostile glare, Connor's scornful smirk, the conspiratorial wink they shared whenever Sensei Mitchell looked away, and silently committed each detail to memory. That quiet resolve, even without a single outward protest, unnerved Jake and Connor more than ever. They were used to victims showing fear, even tears on the mat. But Maya and Mia no longer did. Every time they were shoved down, they popped right back up, locking eyes with their aggressors without a word of complaint. When forced into sparring drills and taking hits far harder than necessary, neither flinched nor shrank back, nor gave any sign of weakness. Frustrated, Jake escalated his tactics. During one drill, when Sensei Mitchell had them switch partners for defense practice, Jake, accidentally, cranked up the force on Maya's arm lock, slamming her to the mat. He leaned in and taunted, "How's that feel, little monkey? Hurt much? Or you gonna cry in front of everyone again?" Maya said nothing, but her eyes were not the fearful ones Jake expected. They were icy and composed, and for a moment he froze. Likewise, in sessions with Connor, Mia no longer fell for surprise sweeps or knee hooks. Even when he knocked her down, she sprang up instantly, ready and unblinking in his face. Connor, who thrived on domination, grew increasingly impatient. One day, he unleashed a brutally hard strike, but instead of crying, Mia exhaled sharply, retrieved her glove, and stood her ground, turning the air between them electric. After every class, Jake and Connor huddled together, plotting how to break through the twins' new armor. The more they witnessed Maya and Mia's resilience, the more threatened they felt. The dojo's self-appointed kings watched their control slip away and their pride crack. To the other students, Maya and Mia's silence no longer read as fear, but as something to be respected. A few of the newer faces, especially those who'd once been bullied by Jake and Connor, quietly admired how the sisters rose without complaint or showboating, yet never sacrificed their dignity. Only Sensei Mitchell continued to look the other way. Whenever a scuffle erupted, he'd glance and then walk off, sometimes even offering the black belts a cold smile as if their cruelty were just part of discipline. But anyone paying close attention could see it. In Maya and Mia's eyes there was no resignation. On nights when they stayed late and waited outside the dojo under the yellow lights for their father, they exchanged steely glances, silently reminding each other that what played out on the mat was just the beginning. Inside them lay an arsenal of hidden weapons, calm focus, combat reflexes, defensive skill, all honed each night in the Turner garage. Yet the twins kept their secret. They never unleashed their full force or showcased their new skills, always pretending to be the modest yellow belts, letting Jake and Connor believe they still had the upper hand. Fresh bruises were hidden under long sleeves, and they greeted instructors and classmates with polite smiles. But beneath that calm exterior, two little warriors were preparing for the moment they would not only defend themselves, but seize justice and overturn the cruelty that had ruled Warrior's Path for far too long. And it seemed the first sparks of that true battle were already flickering, just waiting for a small spark to ignite a wave that would wash away every prejudice and cruelty reigning in the dojo. The silence of Maya and Mia, and their unshakable resolve in the face of every psychological and physical assault, had stretched the tension in Warrior's Path to snapping point. Yet no one suspected that, beneath their calm exterior, the two girls were quietly preparing for an unforeseen turning point. One late weekend afternoon, a bright new poster went up on the dojo's bulletin board. Citywide Open Martial Arts Tournament, all belts, all ages. It listed every division, most prominently the Open Division, where any student, regardless of rank, could face off even against seasoned black belts. The news spread like wildfire among the students, especially those who'd long seen Jake and Connor as untouchable kings of the dojo. Everyone assumed the Open Division was for true masters, Jake and Connor's chance to cement their crowns, not a beginner's dare. But at the very first registration session, Maya and Mia shattered their usual silence. Facing their classmates and even Sensei Mitchell, the sisters strode to the sign-up table and wrote their names under Open Division without a flicker of hesitation. The dojo fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in whispers, giggles, and wide-eyed disbelief. Jake, lurking nearby, couldn't resist. "What's this? Our little yellow belts want to mix it up with the grown-ups. Did you pick the wrong division?" Connor laughed and tapped Maya's pen mockingly. "Open Division is for people who actually know how to fight. This isn't a comedy show, right, Jake?" Veteran students chimed in with their own taunts. "Guess they want to be the town's laughingstock. Hope they've got a medic on standby, someone's gonna need stitches." Even Sensei Mitchell frowned at the roster, then turned to the twins with a mix of confusion and contempt. "Are you sure you don't have the wrong slot? Open Division isn't the same as training here in the dojo." Maya looked up steadily. "We're not mistaken, Sensei. We want to test ourselves. Win or lose, we need to know how far we can really go." Mia squeezed her sister's hand, throat tight but unwavering. The dojo lights cast their faces in stark relief. Two young women's fierce, burning confidence against a sea of doubtful, mocking gazes. To everyone else, it seemed like youthful folly or pitiable naivete. But for Maya and Mia, it was a silent declaration of war, the first step toward reclaiming the respect, honor, and justice that had been stolen from them. That very evening, in the locker room, Jake strutted past them and hissed low enough for only the twins to hear. "Get ready to embarrass yourselves in front of the whole city. Taking my hits on that big stage should be a real show, huh?" Connor slapped Jake's shoulder, smirking. "Trust me, Jake, they'll leave more of a mess than just banana peels on the mat." This time, Maya and Mia only smiled. No hesitation, no fear, just a strange, steely determination. Their bullies' provocations could no longer touch the fire blazing in their hearts. Instead, every insult and mocking laugh only fueled their resolve. From that night on, the twins doubled their secret training with their father. David knew the moment had come. He taught them not just technique, but how to stand tall under pressure, how to steady their breathing, read an opponent, stay calm under taunts, and never lose faith in themselves. To Jake and Connor, the tournament was another chance to reinforce their power, to publicly humiliate the last challengers they still controlled. To Maya and Mia, it was the arena where every hidden pain, every sleepless night, every drop of sweat would be laid bare, and where they would prove once and for all that true strength doesn't come from belt color or the bully's laughter, but from a heart that refuses to yield to injustice. Days of tense, excited anticipation passed. On the surface, Warrior's Path seemed its usual calm, but underneath a storm was gathering, and no one realized that the two youngest, most underestimated fighters were about to become its eye, ready to sweep away every ounce of false pride on that tournament floor. The atmosphere inside Millbrook's downtown arena that afternoon was nothing like a typical tournament. Hundreds of spectators packed the stands. Parents, students, curious locals, all had come to witness the region's biggest martial arts event of the year. Colorful banners bearing the logos of major dojos hung everywhere, while chants and drumbeats rolled through the air like crashing waves. In one corner of the crowd, Maya and Mia stood silently beside their father, two small blades of grass awaiting the storm, yet their eyes burned with unshakable resolve. On the mat, Jake and Connor strode out with supreme confidence. Their black belts gleamed against white jizz, and their smug smirks stayed firmly in place. Every step they took was cheered by the Warriors' Path faithful, while most of the audience watched skeptically. No one really believed these tiny yellow belts. Newcomers who'd only trained for a few months had any chance. Snickers and biting comments rippled through the seats. They're just here for a show, right? Better have an ambulance ready for those girls. But Maya and Mia paid no mind. Over the past weeks, every ounce of fear and self-doubt had been hammered into steely courage in their home garage. Outside the ring, their father David clenched his fists, his gaze never leaving his daughters, brimming with a father's unwavering faith. When the organizers announced the first match, Maya Turner versus Connor Mills, the stands erupted in chatter. Connor bounded onto the mat, eyes blazing, and leaned close to Maya, hissing, "Get ready to embarrass yourself in front of the whole city, little monkey." Maya offered no reply. She bowed to the referee, then stepped into her stance with complete calm. The bell rang, and Connor lunged immediately, certain he would knock her out in seconds. But just moments later, the truth struck like lightning. Maya slipped aside, using the escape move her father taught her to redirect Connor's kick, then spun and delivered a perfectly placed strike to his rib. Off balance and stunned, Connor barely registered the follow-up sweep before he crashed to the mat. The crowd blinked in disbelief. Connor, the dojo's black belt king, had fallen in under 15 seconds. The arena went silent. Before the referee could even call point, Maya had already shifted back into her defensive guard, eyes ice cold as she watched Connor struggle beneath her. Then the stands exploded, gasps followed by wild applause, while Warriors Path members stared at one another speechless. Next up was Mia Turner versus Jake Harrison. Jake stormed onto the mat, fury on his face after seeing his partner's swift defeat. He snarled at Mia, "Too bad for you. I'm not as weak as Connor. I'll show you real humiliation." Mia didn't respond. She bowed, assumed her guard, and waited. The bell rang, and Jake unleashed a flurry of vicious kicks and hooks, but Mia danced through each attack, maintaining perfect distance. As Jake shifted weight mid-combo, she seized the opening, firing a 3-strike counter. A straight punch to the stomach, a low kick to the knee, and then a spinning elbow to his chest. Jake crumpled, winded and stunned, utterly humiliated. The match was over in 20 seconds, and the arena erupted like a thunderclap. Doubtful whispers turned to shouts of amazement. The old taunts fell silent, replaced by cheers and hoots of excitement. "Unbelievable! Those were yellow belts?" rang out from every section. In the stands, Sensei Mitchell was frozen. He'd never expected the very students he and the dojo had dismissed to topple Warriors' Path's brightest stars. On the mats, Jake and Connor lay defeated, not just in body, but in pride and honor. David Turner watched his daughters amid the roaring applause, pride choking him. Maya and Mia hadn't just reclaimed their own dignity, they had struck a devastating blow against the prejudice and injustice that had shadowed Warriors' Path for so long. Yet Maya and Mia knew this was only the beginning of a real storm. The true test of strength and pride was only just starting, right there on that mat. The cheers of admiration still rang through the arena, while back at the Warriors' Path corner, shame and shock hung heavy in the air. Jake and Connor sat frozen on the mat, unwilling or unable to rise after being publicly humiliated before hundreds of onlookers, two dojo kings finally bested beyond question by the very girls they'd scorned. Friends, instructors, and parents all stared at the defeated pair with a mix of disbelief, embarrassment, and disappointment. But for Jake and Connor, that humiliation swiftly curdled into blind rage. Their pride, built on mocking and belittling others, lay in ruins before the crowd, irreparable. The moment the referee declared the results, both staggered off the mat, eyes bloodshot, jaws clenched. From the stands came boos and restless whispers, fanning the flames of wounded ego burning inside them. As Maya and Mia turned to leave the competition area, Jake threw decorum aside. He lunged behind Maya and drove a savage hook into her shoulder amid the jostling crowd. Connor followed, slamming a fierce elbow into Mia's ribs, heedless of rules or witnesses. In seconds, the audience barely understood what was happening before the two girls were embroiled in a full-blown brawl on the mat. Screams erupted from the front rows, and judges and referees rushed in to pull the combatants apart, but chaos reigned like a raging storm. Some Warriors' Path students, rather than stepping in, seemed mesmerized by the sudden violence. Jake and Connor's fury had transcended the bounds of sport, morphing into brazen public revenge, where every restraint and rule lay shattered. What happened next stunned the entire arena. No longer the helpless little girls, Maya and Mia instantly switched to combat-ready defense. Those real-world techniques their father had drilled into them in the garage burst to life. When Jake shoved Maya, she blocked his strike, spun, grabbed his wrist, and used his momentum to flip him raw onto the mat in front of everyone's jaws dropping. Connor, thinking he'd terrify Mia, mistimed his elbow. Mia slipped behind him, locked his arm, and swept his legs out from under him, sending him sprawling across the canvas. Then, in a flash, she knelt into a pin, pressing her knee into his back, holding him immobilized until referees and security could intervene. Jake lunged again, fury blazing, but Maya met him head-on. She evaded his grab, countered with a precise block, sweeping kick, spinning shoulder strike, and finally a simple but devastating chokehold. He thrashed in desperate defeat as the crowd watched, breathless. In under 60 seconds, the self-styled dojo overlords lay vanquished in front of hundreds of witnesses, cameras rolling, lights blazing. Gone was any trace of glory. Jake and Connor gasped for air, broken in body, pride, and spirit, tasting true fear for the first time. The spectators stood in stunned silence, half in panic, half electrified by what they'd seen. Officials halted the melee. Security hauled the two instigators off the mat, and amid the clang of protests, Jake's father, Richard Harrison, and Connor's dad, Bill Mills, accusing, "They cheated. They played dirty." Order slowly returned. From his vantage point in the stands, David Turner gripped the railing, pride and resolve shining in his eyes. He knew that what his daughters had done today was more than self-defense. It was a silent message to everyone who had tolerated, ignored, or enabled their torment. Maya and Mia, in that moment, not only beat their bullies but awakened an entire community to the power of courage and the necessity of resistance when justice is trampled. As the PA system called for order, Maya and Mia stood firm in the center of the mat, breathing heavily, their eyes blazing with a pride like never before. They had dared to confront injustice in the very place that once terrified them, and now no one in that arena could ever look at them with contempt again, not even those who once claimed absolute power over the dojo floor. Just as order was being restored on the mat, while Maya and Mia were still recovering from their fierce self-defense, a new wave of outrage erupted. This time from the grown-ups who'd long assumed that money, status, and family name would shield their kids no matter how badly they behaved. Richard Harrison, Jake's father, strode down from the VIP section to the competition area, face flushed with fury, eyes blazing. Bill Mills, Connor's dad, followed at his side, finger pointed accusatorily at Maya and Mia. Gone were their usual airs of calm prestige. In their place were scowls and snarled voices, their shame at seeing their superior children humbled turning to raw rage. "This is cheating," Richard thundered, his voice echoing through the arena. "My son couldn't possibly lose like that. Those two must have been coached illegally. I demand you investigate their eligibility." Bill Mills chimed in, tension coiling in his shoulders. "This is a disgrace. Jake and Connor are black belts, multiple-time champions. There's no way these yellow belt kids suddenly turned into fighters overnight. There's definitely foul play here." Their accusations ignited another round of murmurs. Other parents, especially those from the area's elite families, shifted uncomfortably, some even quietly siding with Richard and Bill out of fear of offending them. They eyed Maya and Mia with suspicion, whispering about secret outside coaching or performance-enhancing tricks. The organizers immediately intervened. Mr. Lewis, head referee, who had overseen the entire tournament, grabbed the microphone with authority. "We have thoroughly reviewed the registration records, training footage, and belt ranking process. Maya and Mia Turner fully qualified to compete. There is absolutely no evidence of cheating, unauthorized coaching, or any prohibited substances. All defensive actions they took were within the rules and clearly captured on video in front of everyone." Not stopping there, one official called for the decisive moments to be replayed on the big screen. Hundreds watched as Maya and Mia executed straightforward, perfectly legal counterattacks, only defending themselves when attacked, never exceeding necessary force. The truth was undeniable. The arena fell silent, save for the sputtering protests of Richard and Bill, who refused to accept the outcome. Then, under pressure from the crowd and before hundreds of witnesses, the organizers delivered their final ruling. Jake Harrison and Connor Mills are hereby permanently suspended from all martial arts competitions in the Millbrook area and from all youth events. Their violent, illegal attacks on opposing competitors will not be tolerated. Any repeat of such behavior will result in criminal charges. A roar of reaction swept through the stands. Warriors Path members and spectators from every dojo alike were stunned. Some began live-streaming the announcement. Jake and Connor were escorted off the mat by security, faces ashen with shock and humiliation. Their once untouchable reputations went up in smoke under the scornful gaze of everyone present. Meanwhile, Richard Harrison and Bill Mills, their pride ripped to shreds, nearly went mad at the verdict. Bill slammed his hand on a table and shouted, "I'm suing this entire tournament. You'll pay for defaming the mill's name." Richard stormed toward the organizers, jabbing a finger at David Turner, who stood calmly beside his daughters, and hissed, "What dirty trick did you teach your kids, Turner? Do you want to ruin my son's future?" David Turner did not flinch. He stepped forward to face Richard, his expression composed but steel hard. "I taught my daughters to defend themselves against bullying and injustice. You should ask yourselves what your sons did to deserve today's outcome." That firm, unflinching reply left Richard speechless. The arena paused, then burst into applause that quickly spread. Many, especially parents who had silently tolerated bullying until now, shifted their support to Maya and Mia. For Jake and Connor, the suspension marked the end of every privilege they and their families had ever wielded to dominate others. But for Richard and Bill, their shattered pride morphed into a smoldering grudge. These wealthy fathers would not let this go easily. Their humiliation vowed to stir new storms, threatening the fragile peace that Maya, Mia, and the Turner family had only just begun to build. Yet, in the sudden hush that fell over the arena, Maya and Mia understood. Justice may be delayed or challenged, but the truth, courage, and honor they had shown were now clear for everyone to see. The pale streetlights cast long shadows across the quiet Turner neighborhood as night deepened. After Maya and Mia's stunning victory at the tournament, the house still buzzed with excitement and pride, but the girls carried a vague undercurrent of worry in their hearts. David Turner noticed. He double-checked every lock and security bolt, sensing that this night wouldn't be as peaceful as the last. At exactly 11 p.m., the doorbell rang, rapid, urgent, like a war drum. Lisa Turner, having just finished tidying the kitchen, peered through the window in alarm. Maya and Mia, already in bed but wide awake, froze at the sound, tension rippling through the warm comfort of their home. David approached the front door and glanced at the security monitor. Two familiar figures stood on the porch. Richard Harrison and Bill Mills. The porch light fell across their angry faces and arrogance. Whispering to his wife, he said, "Take the girls up to their room and lock the door. Don't open it for anyone, not even me." He cracked the door open, securing the chain. "It's late. What are you doing here?" Richard's voice growled through the gap, stepping in close. "You know why we're here. Don't think you can humiliate my son in public and call it over." Bill Mills followed, his tone menacing. "You've destroyed our family's reputation. If you don't want the whole town hearing worse about your daughters, you'll cooperate. Issue a public apology, pay us compensation, and withdraw from all tournaments forever." David stood firm, meeting their threats with steady resolve. "I have nothing to apologize for. Your sons lost because of their own cruelty, their bullying, their violence, and everyone saw that. As for compensation, get off my porch or I'll call the police." Furious, Richard slammed his shoulder against the door, rattling the chain. "Who do you think you are, you washed-up soldier? If we don't teach you a lesson tonight, we're no longer Harrisons or Mills." In a blink, David snapped the chain free, stepped onto the porch, and shut the door behind him, ready for a fight with no mercy. "What do you want? A brawl on my doorstep so we all make headlines tomorrow." Before he finished, Richard threw the first punch. David sidestepped, grabbed Richard's wrist, dropped his weight, and snapped the arm backward. A military-style lock, unflashy but devastatingly effective. Bill lunged in to help, but David rotated, rammed his shoulder into Bill's chest, and swept his legs out from under him. Both men hit the steps in a heap. The whole scuffle lasted under 10 seconds, yet it laid bare the mismatch. Two powerful dads, used to settling everything with money and influence, were helpless against a battle-hardened soldier. Groaning, they tried to rise, but David stayed between them and the door, breathing steadily, eyes cold as steel. "I'll say it again. Get off my property. Don't you ever threaten my daughters or drag my family into your dirty games. Next time, I'll let the law handle you. And trust me, you won't have any way out." At that moment, patrol car headlights swept into view at the end of the street, sirens tearing through the night. A neighbor had called 911 when they heard the commotion. Richard and Bill fled in haste, bruised and humiliated. When the police arrived, David calmly recounted the events. From upstairs, Lisa, Maya, and Mia watched through the window, hearts pounding with both fear and pride. Maya and Mia knew their father had protected them not only with his strength, but with his authority and unwavering conviction, standing up to the outdated power of men who once thought themselves untouchable. That night, the Turner family sat together in the living room, holding each other close. Though they knew danger might still lurk beyond their walls, they also knew they would never again be victims, but a family ready to fight, ready to defend themselves, no matter how dark the threats outside might grow. The smoldering rage of Richard Harrison and Bill Mills hadn't even begun to cool when police sirens tore through the quiet Turner neighborhood, shattering the tense hush that had settled outside their home. 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt, red and blue lights sweeping across silent houses and casting anxious neighbors in their glow. In the darkness, the town's 2 once powerful fathers looked small, furtive, and humiliated. Officers Martinez and Campbell stepped deliberately out of their cars, professional and alert. "Ma'am, sir," Martinez called out, her voice crisp across the porch. "We received reports of a disturbance and an unlawful entry. Would you explain why you 2 gentlemen turned up at this address at 11 p.m.? Richard Harrison opened his mouth to argue, but David Turner calmly took charge. He explained that over the past days, the men had harassed his family with threatening calls and messages, and that tonight they'd shown up without warning demanding compensation for their honor. He pointed out the scrapes on his arms and described how Richard and Bill had battered the door before attacking him. Lisa Turner handed over her phone, displaying the barrage of menacing texts and voicemails. Officer Campbell checked with the Turners' neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had witnessed the men forcing their way to the door and calling 911 when she heard the commotion. Under questioning, Richard and Bill tried to claim they'd only come to talk, insisting, "They've ruined our sons' futures." But when Martinez pressed why they'd broken in at night and used violence, her tone sharpened. "There are no special rules in this town for the wealthy. You've committed 2 serious offenses, unlawful entry and disturbing the peace, with threats of violence. We will process this according to the law." Within minutes, the fathers were asked for ID, read their Miranda rights, and handcuffed in full view of stunned neighbors, a spectacle unprecedented for 2 families long accustomed to wielding influence over the community. Inside, Maya and Mia clung to their mother, watching through the crack in the door as their father reassured them. The law protects those who stand up for what's right. The next morning, news of the arrests spread like wildfire through Millbrook, from schools and boardrooms to coffee shops and social media. The old rumors about the Turners causing trouble and the girls cheating evaporated, replaced by headlines about 2 wealthy fathers cuffed for flouting the law and prioritizing pride over justice. Harrison's and Mills's attorneys scrambled in vain. The evidence was overwhelming. Security cam footage, eyewitness testimony, threatening messages, and David's minor injuries all told the same story. The local court convened a preliminary hearing, drawing a large crowd of community members. In court, David Turner stood tall as he recounted the bullying, the violence, and finally the midnight intrusion. Every piece of evidence confirmed he'd acted in self-defense and within legal bounds. By contrast, Richard and Bill were indicted for unlawful entry, disturbing the peace, and making criminal threats. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. David Turner was fully exonerated, no penalties, no civil liability. Harrison and Mills faced fines, were ordered to compensate the Turners for emotional distress, and were publicly condemned by the community for their arrogance and contempt of the law. Millbrook buzzed with the news for days. Neighbors who'd once side-eyed or supported Jake and Connor now turned away in shame, regretting how they'd enabled injustice. Meanwhile, Maya and Mia, after months of bowing their heads under bullying, walked down the street with their heads held high, earning genuine respect instead of pity or suspicion. The Turner family knew their quest for justice and dignity had never been easy, but this victory proved that when you have the courage to stand up for what's right and faith in the law, you're no longer a victim. You become a beacon of strength and self-respect for the entire community. The echoes of the court proceedings didn't stop with the Turner, Harrison, and Mills families. The truth about bullying, violence, and covert protection at the tournament opened the door to a much larger investigation aimed at the root of all this injustice. Warrior's Path Karate Dojo, led by Sensei Robert Mitchell. Just days after the local press ran detailed stories on the scandal, the once proud training hall of Warrior's Path had grown cold and uneasy. Parents whispered about leaked videos, recordings, and messages from former students exposing months of physical and psychological abuse. Yet Sensei Mitchell had done nothing to stop it. Many admitted they'd stayed silent or looked the other way when they saw Maya and Mia being targeted, simply because they feared for their own children's advancement. Immediately, the Regional Martial Arts Council, in cooperation with city authorities, launched a full audit. Inspectors arrived unannounced one afternoon to review student files, scrutinize surveillance footage, and interview dozens of parents and students. The darker side of Warrior's Path was slowly revealed. Clear evidence of favoritism toward wealthy families' children, training sessions that were really punishments for weaker students, lax oversight, and teachings that disguised outright bullying as discipline. Sensei Mitchell, once held in high esteem by the town, now stood alone amid empty lockers. He was grilled on his complicity, ignoring student complaints, shielding Jake and Connor, and putting financial gain above his duty to protect all students. Faced with irrefutable proof, the Martial Arts Council made a decisive ruling. All coaching certifications held by Mitchell are revoked. Warrior's Path is suspended and its license permanently revoked. Mitchell is banned from opening, teaching, or advising at any dojo in the entire state. News of these sanctions spread quickly, adding fuel to the fire. Within a week, families pulled their children out of Warrior's Path in droves. Students who once wore their uniforms with pride now hid their GIs in closets, unable to face the humiliation of those memories. The dojo's nameplates, medals, and certificates came down from the walls, and the training floor echoed only with the whistle of the wind through its glass doors, instead of the chatter and laughter that once filled the space. In those final days, Mitchell was no longer the dignified sensei, just a solitary, defeated figure weighed down by regret and fearful of the community's wrath. Veteran members fell into crisis. Parents, who had once prided themselves on their association with the dojo, now felt anger and disappointment. And younger students, especially those who'd been bullied, took months even to speak of the past. The collapse of Warrior's Path served as the greatest warning to all of Millbrook. A strong community will not tolerate violence, protection rackets, or callousness, no matter how they're disguised as training, discipline, or tradition. It was also a triumphant victory for courage and steadfastness from those who had once been the most vulnerable, but who knew how to stand up for themselves. In its final days, the image of Maya and Mia, once silent and bowed, now emerging boldly from the shadows, became a symbol of justice reborn. They inspired countless families who had quietly endured injustice in places they'd believed were safe. Warrior's path fell. An era of privilege, rigid conservatism, and arrogance had ended. Millbrook was ready to begin a new chapter, one in which every child deserves protection, respect, and the chance to grow in a truly fair environment. After the dramatic upheaval and the inevitable collapse of Warrior's Path, Maya and Mia Turner, and their parents, entered a new phase of transformation. Echoes of those tense, painful days and their triumphant victory still lingered, but for the two girls what mattered most now was their newfound freedom and the spark of hope rekindled in their hearts. A week later, while the scandal was still making headlines, the Turners received an invitation from Integrity Martial Arts Academy, a newly opened dojo led by Master Chen, a former U.S. Marine of Asian descent known for his stern but principled approach. Everywhere they looked inside the gym, large posters proclaimed, "Respect is our first rule. No one gets left behind." On their first day at Integrity, Maya and Mia were greeted with friendly faces, a warm handshake from Master Chen, and encouraging smiles from the instructors. There were no suspicious glances, no discrimination over skin color or background, just positive energy and laughter filling the space. Master Chen soon recognized the extraordinary determination and potential in the twins. He took time to hear their story. Every scar, every fear, every dream. Maya and Mia, no longer afraid to speak of their past, were encouraged to turn their painful experiences into a source of strength for others. Within months, they didn't just fit in. They far exceeded even their own expectations. The discipline they'd learned from their father combined with their combat training was now refined under a philosophy of respect, support, and inclusion. They steadily advanced through the belt ranks, yellow to orange to green, passing each rigorous test on the wings of their grit and perseverance. The biggest surprise came from the Academy's board. Maya and Mia were chosen as junior coaches, a role never before offered to brand-new 14-year-old students. Master Chen announced the decision at the weekend ceremony. "Ladies, you are living proof that true strength comes from willpower, courage, and kindness. You've not only fought for yourselves, but you've inspired and protected those more vulnerable. That is the true heart of a martial artist." Moved to tears, the twins received a standing ovation from their classmates. Once the victims of ridicule and bullying, they had become mentors to new students, especially those shy or scarred by their experiences elsewhere. Under Maya and Mia's guidance, these younger students began learning how to defend themselves, how to say no to injustice, and to step onto the mat without fear. The atmosphere at Integrity was unlike anything the twins had ever known. Every class began with 10 minutes discussing respect and empathy, and no one was ever allowed to use martial arts to intimidate or show off. Anyone displaying bullying behavior had to attend special counseling sessions led jointly by the Turner sisters and Master Chen. By the end of that summer, Maya and Mia had become symbols of renewal, representatives of a new generation of students who learned to turn their wounds into strength. The younger children whispered reverently about Coach Turner and Coach Turner, and parents felt confident in trusting their kids to such a fair, healthy environment. Each day, David and Lisa Turner drove their daughters to practice with hearts full of pride and relief. They understood that, after all the storms and losses, it was perseverance, love, and a spirit of resistance that had not only kept their family standing, but propelled them forward stronger than ever. On one golden late summer afternoon, Maya and Mia laughed with their new friends on the training mats, eyes sparkling with determination. No shadow of the past could hold them back now. This was their true rebirth, the beginning of a journey of growth, confidence, and compassion in a vibrant, hopeful community. The autumn light filled the training hall of Integrity Martial Arts Academy, where Maya and Mia Turner sat among the younger students, listening as Master Chen spoke about the true meaning of martial arts. Not just strength, but resilience, compassion, and the courage to stand against injustice. In the solemn atmosphere of the year-end award ceremony, the twins occupied the front row, each wearing the Academy's new logo on their uniform. Stand up, speak out. After emerging from the darkness of Warrior's Path and fighting forces that had harmed them both physically and emotionally, Maya and Mia had become symbols not only of Millbrook's next generation of martial artists, but of the community's spirit of resistance and the rebirth of justice. Early that winter, the Turners received an official letter from the State Department of Education and Culture. You have been chosen as ambassadors for the statewide anti-bullying initiative. You will lead training sessions and share your story in schools of all sizes, inspiring young people who have been or are victims of school violence. We are proud of you. The Turner family erupted in joy. Tears of relief and pride glistened on Lisa's cheeks as David, the father who had quietly kept the flame of justice alive for his daughters during their darkest hours, watched with a beaming smile. On the first snowy morning of the season, Maya and Mia stood on the schoolyard stage before hundreds of students, teachers, parents, and state officials. Their voices rang out clearly. We were once bullied and hurt, and we thought we were only victims. But we learned that no one has the right to make you feel small. True strength is knowing how to protect yourself, how to speak up, and most importantly, never letting fear control your life. Thunderous applause followed, and admiring eyes turned to the two young women who had stepped out of the shadows, not through revenge, but by turning their wounds into a force for protecting others. The Turner Sisters Pledge anti-bullying program quickly spread to schools across the region, teaching students to recognize and confront injustice, while equipping them with self-defense techniques, communication skills, confidence, and self-respect. Beyond the academy, Maya and Mia spoke on educational panels and appeared on television, becoming faces of the Youth Dare to Stand Up movement. Letters and messages poured in from across the country. Thank you. Because of you, I finally told someone about the bullying I endured. Whenever I remember your story, I feel stronger. Yet their greatest achievement wasn't fame. It was the peace they felt each night, knowing that without the courage to trust in justice and stand up for one another, their community would never have healed as it did. They reminded themselves that the greatest victory isn't defeating an opponent, but refusing to let hatred and suffering turn you into someone like those who hurt you. As for their old adversaries, Jake, Connor, Richard, and Bill, their reputations followed them, marred for years. Though they had opportunities to make amends and earn compassion by admitting their wrongdoing, arrogance and resentment had destroyed their honor, prestige, and even future prospects. Millbrook learned a vital lesson. Staying silent in the face of injustice is complicity, and justice only triumphs when someone dares to light the first spark. On graduation day, Maya and Mia stood side by side to receive their honors beneath the bright sun, faces radiant with confidence. Master Chen wrapped his arms around them and whispered, "You've taught even your teacher the meaning of resilience and the true value of martial virtue." The story closed with the Turner family reunited around a warm dinner table, laughter echoing through their cozy home, happiness and pride in every breath. Maya and Mia understood that justice, courage, and unity would always light their way, so that anyone, no matter how small or vulnerable, could take control of their destiny and deserve an equal, fulfilling life. For true strength never belongs to bullies, but to those whose hearts, wills, and compassion refuse to yield. If you found this story meaningful, please hit like, share it with friends to spread the positive message, and subscribe so you won't miss our next inspiring journey. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.